Worries that the terror group may be trying to step up the scale of its killing abroad. CNN chief national security correspondent Jim Sciutto has been looking into this. What are you learning?
Well, the thinking at this point is that ISIS focuses on the small bore, not particularly ambitious lone wolf attacks. And they've in fact encouraged their followers, go out, get a gun, get a hatchet, do what you can. Don't worry about how big it is, how coordinated it is. There is now a debate, I'm told, by U.S. officials within the U.S. intelligence community. There's a school of thought there that thinks actually they may be working on building the capability of carrying out mass casualty attacks. So we're talking about not just a Charlie Hebdo, right? You know, a coordinated multi-gunman attack kills a number of people, but even perhaps attacks on commercial aviation, which of course can be very mass casualty, and to this point have been largely the realm of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and Al-Qaeda, core Al-Qaeda, other groups like that.
So what is this? Is this what folks are concerned about, that this could be a competition between ISIS and Al-Qaeda?
It is, and we're seeing that. I mean, these groups compete. They're like businesses, really. They're competing for recruits. They're competing for territory. And you have seen recruits go in either direction. AQAP's been losing supporters, for instance, in Yemen to ISIS. ISIS has been gaining supporters from even the Taliban in Afghanistan. And earlier this week, it was actually interesting because AQAP, which has focused on these mass casualty attacks, put out an appeal to its supporters saying, hey, you know, ISIS isn't the only one in the lone wolf business. If you want to carry out a lone wolf attack in our name, feel free to do it, because they're conscious of ISIS's growing support. And now you have at least a school of thought in the intelligence community that ISIS is doing the same thing, trying to get in on the AQAP territory by plotting big attacks, which of course, from their perspective, would have other benefits because mass casualty attacks attract a lot of attention and have a major impact on U.S. policy and policy in the West, etc.
They sure do. Such a great fear in that regard. Jim Sciutto, thanks so much. Now, while the U.S. is opening a new front against ISIS, from the air anyway, the situation on the ground remains grave. The U.S. cannot account for this small group of Syrian rebels it has trained and deployed, and ISIS has overrun another key Syrian city. Let's turn now to CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr. Barbara, what's going on?
Good evening, Brianna. You know, as you say, expect to see U.S. military action in the skies over Syria ramp up in the coming days, but very serious questions about whether it will be enough. U.S. airstrikes against ISIS in Syria could be launched from this Turkish airbase within days, according to U.S. officials. This section of the border, U.S. intelligence calculates new ISIS fighters are still entering Syria as fast as the U.S. can kill them. On the ground, U.S. strategy rests on the shoulders of just 54 U.S.-trained moderate Syrian rebels.
What we're trying to do is protect this very small force as it's on the very early stages of building combat power.
The official Pentagon word, the group is eager to fight and thwarted a recent Al-Qaeda attack. The reality, up to half are missing. They may have deserted early on, fled after the attack last week, or been captured. One defense official admitted to CNN, quote, they are no longer a coherent military unit.
They're not accompanied by U.S. forces in the field, which means they're going to get limited training, some equipment, but the vast majority of successful U.S. train, advise, assist missions require embedded forces in the field.
Privately, Pentagon officials say something has to change in how the U.S. aids the rebels.
This breaks basically every train, advise, and assist rule that special operations forces have learned.
And ISIS still grabbing territory. Activists say in this western Syrian town, more than 200 people have been abducted, up to 500 unaccounted for. CNN cannot independently verify those claims.
Today actually marks the one-year anniversary of the commencement of airstrikes in Iraq against ISIL targets.
There have been gains, but Iraqi forces still trying desperately to retake lost ground. Here in Baji, where there is a critical oil refinery, U.S. officials privately acknowledge ISIS is now massing forces gearing up for a new counterattack. And still, a year after the bombing began, the ultimate challenge, the struggle to find a strategy, find a solution that will roll back some of ISIS's momentum, at least in some key areas. Brianna.
Barbara Starr at the Pentagon, thank you. And joining me now is Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland. He's the senior Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee. Sir, thanks so much for being with us. And I want to ask you about that report of Jim Sciutto's that you just heard. Can you tell us how close the U.S. government believes ISIS may be to making this desire to plan large-scale attacks a reality?
Well, we know ISIS is a very dangerous terrorist group. We know that they have ambitions to cause as much harm as they can to the United States. So yes, we treat their risk factors with great care. We know that they would like to do more damage. We know that the lone wolf type activities have been encouraged, but they would like to do more damage if they could. So yes, we're very concerned about where they may be.
We're hearing different estimates of how long it will take to eradicate ISIS or to defeat ISIS. Years is the consensus, but how many years?
Well, ISIS in Syria presents a particular problem because we have the Assad regime. So we have a regime that is not a friendly regime, a regime that we think has no legitimacy. So at the same time, we're trying to assist the vetted opposition, the moderate opposition, to go after ISIS. We have problems of protecting our trained troops from the Assad regime itself. So it's not an easy situation in Syria. We are doing what we can to help stop the spread of ISIS. We've had a better success in Iraq, but we still have issues in Iraq with a government that will protect all of its citizens, including the Sunni population and the Kurdish population. So this is a real challenge to get the type of support from the local countries that are capable of standing up to ISIS extreme activities.
All right, Senator Cardin, stay with me. We have many more questions for you. Senator Cardin is undecided on the Iran deal. We'll be talking to him about that after a quick break. We'll be right back.